Good afternoon, students. Today we are going to discuss wastewater treatment. Yesterday in the last lecture, we discussed about what is sewage, what are the different types of sewage, then why it is necessary to treat sewage, what are the objectives of sewage treatment and all. So today here we are going to discuss about various conventional sewage treatment methods. What are the conventional sewage treatment methods? Sewage is actually first subjected to preliminary treatment, followed by primary treatment or primary sedimentation primary sedimentation process, followed by secondary sedimentation, which we call as secondary treatment, which we call as biological treatment, which is followed by secondary sedimentation. Okay. So sewage is first subjected to preliminary treatment, then primary sedimentation, then biological or secondary treatment, then secondary sedimentation. After secondary sedimentation and after primary sedimentation, whatever solid material, sludge, settles down at the bottom of the primary or secondary sedimentation tank is subjected to sludge digestion, and then it is disposed of. After secondary sedimentation, whatever liquid remains behind, which we call as effluent, is disinfected by the action of chlorine or lime, and then it is sent into the water bodies. Okay. Now, next thing, the conventional sewage treatment method is preliminary treatment. The first stage of sewage is usually preliminary treatment that involves removing large objects like rags, pieces of clothes, maize cobs, wood pieces, paper, plastic, etc., and other heavy minerals like sand and grit. Okay, so the preliminary treatment involves using certain procedures to remove all these large objects. One is screening, another is grit removal, another is pre-aeration. Screening removes large particles, large objects that can damage the downstream processes. Screens, which are made up of inclined steel bars spaced at equal intervals in a sewage channel, remove the large objects. Okay. Okay, you can see here grit removal. Then sand, gravel, and other such high specific gravity materials generally used as equipments for treatment tanks. These creates a rolling motion so that the heavier solids get settled down at the bottom of the tank and the lighter material must remain in suspension. So we remove the grit also. This is practiced. Now the third method is pre-aeration. It is practiced to enrich the wastewater with oxygen. Okay. Now these are the bar screens. We call it screening. Okay, these are the bar screens that are shown in this diagram, which will remove the large objects. And this is a grit chamber, which removes sand and grit. Okay, and then water is sent for primary treatment. What preliminary treatment involves? Preliminary treatment involves removing the debris and grit. So raw sewage is first passed through, subjected to screening. That means it is passed through bar screens to remove large objects. Then it is sent into a grit chamber so that the grit is removed, which can be further used, or other solids are sent to landfill. And after preliminary treatment, sewage is subjected to primary treatment. So during preliminary treatment, the third method is the third process that is carried out after screening and grit removal is pre-aeration. So pre-aeration actually enriches the sewage with oxygen. Okay, so after pre-aeration, sewage enters into the primary sedimentation tank. Now the primary treatment that is given in the primary sedimentation tank comprises of using a septic tank or an Imhoff tank or a plain sedimentation tank. All the three methods, whether you use a septic tank or an Imhoff tank or a plain sedimentation tank, these methods basically involve sedimentation. Sedimentation is gravitational separation of suspended particles. Or you can say sedimentation is gravitational separation of a suspension into its component, solid and liquid phases. Okay, so we actually separate the sewage into solid and liquid phase in sedimentation. Okay, besides sedimentation, septic tank and Imhoff tank to some extent also involve the biological degradation or biological oxidation of the waste. So primary sedimentation process serves two objectives. Number one, it is done achieve high degree of clarification and thickening. What is clarification? Removing the solids from liquid phase. Okay, so during sedimentation, we remove the solids from the liquid phase, then thickening, removal of liquid from solid or sludge. Okay, so clarification and thickening is achieved in primary treatment of sewage. Let us discuss first method of primary treatment of sewage. First method is septic tank. Septic tank are small rectangular chambers which are normally constructed of concrete or steel, or they may be made up of, you can say, concreted basin at the and just sited under the ground level. So small rectangular chambers normally made up of concrete or steel, usually sited just below the ground level. The tanks serve two purposes. First, sedimentation as well as biodegradation or oxidation of the sedimented sludge. Raw sewage, okay, after pre-aeration or the raw sewage directly is allowed to come into the septic tank, where the retention time is 1 to 3 days. 1 to 3 days. During this time, the solids settle to the bottom of the tank, where they are digested under anaerobic condition by anaerobic bacteria. Okay, so what happens? First, the raw sludge is dumped into the septic tank, where it is retained for a period of, say, 3 days. During this time, solids settle at the bottom, where they are digested by under anaerobic condition by anaerobic bacteria. That means clarification and thickening is achieved. Okay. When the sewage is held in the septic tank, a thick crust of scum is formed at the surface of the liquid, which helps to maintain anaerobic condition. Okay, so a thick crust of scum is formed on the top, which will maintain aerobic condition. The septic tank is generally baffled so that heavy solids that have settled out and the scum which floats on the surface do not get discharged off along with the effluent. Okay, so the septic tank is usually provided with baffle walls so that the solids that have settled down as well as the scum that forms a top layer on the liquid should not go out along with the effluent. And desludging, because now the solids settle at the bottom of the tank and they undergo digestion by anaerobic bacteria. So the tank has to be desludged. The sludge that settles at the bottom of the septic tank needs to be removed at regular interval once in every 1 to 5 years. The effluent from septic tank requires further treatment before disposal because it contains pathogenic microorganisms in it. So it needs further treatment before disposal. Okay, this is the basic diagram, or this is the basic, you can say, diagram which is representing a septic tank. So you can see an inlet here. Through the inlet, the sewage comes inside the tank, and this is the sludge or sedimentation zone where the solids settle. A thick crust or scum is formed at the top, which will create anaerobic condition. And whatever effluent, clear effluent gets separated at the top part or above the sludge is removed out from the outlet. Sometimes gas, or you can say gas ventilators are also provided. Okay. So this is the basic, you can say, construction of the method can be used for small installations, isolated rural buildings especially. This method is not reliable so far as removal of pathogenic bacteria or pathogens is concerned. Pathogens are not removed by this method. It is especially practiced for small isolated rural buildings. Okay. Therefore, the drainage from the tank, the septic tank should not be, you can say, there should not be any seepage from the septic tank. The drainage from the septic tank is prevented from seeping into the water supply, which is meant for drinking. Otherwise, it may cause various diseases. Okay, now the second type of tank, which is more advanced as compared to septic tank, is Imhoff tank or double storied tank. So Imhoff tank is a double storied tank. This is the second method of primary sewage treatment. It is more advanced as compared to using a septic tank. Instead of using a septic tank, Imhoff tank is the better option. This tank is a double storied tank. The tank was developed to correct the main defect of the septic tank. So what are the defects that are corrected here? It does not allow the solids once removed to mix again with the incoming sewage. What happens in a septic tank? There is a same chamber. As when the through the inlets, when sewage comes inside, the solids that have settled down again get mixed up with the sewage. This thing does not happen in Imhoff tank. So these are the corrections that are made in Imhoff tank as compared to septic tank. So what happens in Imhoff tank? It does not allow the solids once removed to mix again with the incoming sewage. It provides special gas ventilators for the escape of gases that are formed, that are released during sludge digestion. Okay, so gas ventilators are there for so that gas escapes out. And number two, it does not allow mixing of settled sewage or you can say solids settled at the bottom to mix with the sewage. The best known and commonly used two-storied tank was designed by the German engineer Karl Imhoff, and hence the tank is known as Imhoff tank. It is actually a double-storied tank. Imhoff tank is either circular or rectangular. It is divided into three chambers. Number one, upper chamber or sedimentation compartment. Number two, lower chamber or sludge digestion chamber. Number third part is gas ventilators and scum section. Okay, so if you look at this diagram, this is the upper part that is called as upper compartment or sedimentation, upper compartment or sedimentation compartment. The second part is the lower compartment or sludge digestion compartment. And number three is gas ventilators, which are provided for the escape of gases. So you can see from this diagram, upper chamber or sedimentation chamber, lower chamber or sludge digestion chamber, and these are the gas ventilators. Okay, now let us see this diagram. Okay, here you can see the upper compartment. In the upper compartment, the sewage first comes into the upper compartment. In the upper compartment, one of the arm of the upper compartment is extended. You can see this one of the arm is extended, and there is a small hole in the upper chamber. The small hole in the upper chamber is called as slot, and there is one of the extended bottom. Okay, second chamber at the bottom is sludge digestion chamber, and number three, the gas ventilators. Okay. During the operation of Imhoff tank, it is advisable to reverse the flow of sewage to prevent excessive deposition of solid at one end of the upper chamber. Now, reversing the flow of liquid gives uniform distribution of sludge in lower chamber. Sewage. Okay, look at this. Sewage, after preliminary treatment, enters in the upper chamber where settleable solids get sedimented and come into the lower chamber through a slot. One of the bottom slope of the upper chamber is extended at least 6 inches beyond one of the bottom slope of the upper chamber is extended at least 6 inches beyond the slot to prevent the gas or digested sludge, okay, to enter inside the upper chamber. Now, you can see here. So this is the upper chamber or sludge, you can say sedimentation chamber, right? One of the arm is extended, right? One of the arm is extended. And okay, this is the hole, okay, which is present in the upper chamber. Upper chamber is called as sedimentation chamber. Now, whatever waste that is disposed of it directly comes inside the upper chamber. Then the solids will settle down in the upper chamber, right? Then through this slot, through this opening, the solids, through this opening or slot, the solids fall into the lower chamber, that is the sedimentation, that is the sludge digestion chamber. Okay. So what happens here? First, the solids, first the effluent comes, the sewage comes into the upper chamber. The solid particles which settle down in this upper chamber flow down through the slot into the lower chamber, which is called as sludge digestion chamber. Okay, now what happens after that? Okay. One of the bottom slope of the upper chamber is extended at least 6 inches beyond the slot to prevent the gas or digested sludge to enter into the upper chamber. Okay. So the extended arm actually does not allow the gases to enter into the upper chamber, or it does not allow the sludge which has flown down to enter into the upper chamber. We have also seen that special gas ventilators are provided so that the gases escape out from the gases escape out of the gas ventilators which are formed during sludge digestion. Now, as far as the working of the Imhoff tank is concerned, it is advisable to start operation of the Imhoff tank during early summer. Okay, why? Because the temperature is high enough for rapid digestion of the solid sludge. In some of the cases, from the nearby tank, seed or actively digested sludge is added. It is advisable because it will speed up the process of sludge digestion. Okay. Now the pH of the sludge has to be maintained above 6.8 because acidic conditions are unfavorable for sludge digestion. So whatever sludge which gets collected or which comes down through the slot into the lower chamber, that sludge should have pH more than 6.8. Because if it is less than 6.8, it is unfavorable for sludge digestion. And how can we maintain the pH above 6.8? By adding lime. So we have to maintain the pH above 6.8 by adding lime so that sludge digestion takes place very efficiently. Okay, the Imhoff tank actually does not require much of attention or precaution, but we have to follow certain things. The first thing is the solids that float on the top of the sedimentation compartment. The upper chamber is called as sedimentation chamber. Whatever solids that float on the surface of the upper chamber are removed daily. Then weekly scrapping of the sides and sloping bottom of the sedimentation chamber. See, sedimentation chamber, the sides of the side walls of the sedimentation chamber from inside are scrapped and cleaned. Then one of the slope of the upper sedimentation chamber is extended. That also slope is regularly cleaned. So whatever adhering solid particles are present inside the on the inner walls or on the extended slope, that have to be scrapped off and removed. The slot, the hole in the upper chamber, has to be weekly cleaned. It has to be cleaned weekly. Then sludge that settles down in the lower tank, or in the lower chamber, has to be removed at regular intervals. When sludge is removed, the hardening of the sludge may take place. Okay, so if the sludge is not removed, the sludge may get hardened. So we have to remove it regularly. Then attempts should be made to prevent foaming by adding lime. We have to prevent the process of foaming so that we can, and that is why we add lime, that pH is maintained above 6.8 and digestion takes place properly. The Imhoff tank is very easy to operate as well as economical. Nearly 50 to 60% of the suspended solids are also removed. It is also known as autonomous. Okay, so that is all about septic tank and Imhoff tank. The third tank that may not be used, this plain sedimentation tank is not used widely because in plain sedimentation tank there occurs only sedimentation. That means removal of solid and liquid phase of the sewage. Whereas in case of septic tank and Imhoff tank that we have discussed now, in both the tanks there occurs clarification. That means separation of solid liquid phase. At the same time, the solids or the sludge that settles at the bottom of the tank is digested by the action of anaerobic bacteria. So to some extent, sludge digestion also take place in Imhoff tank as well as septic tank. The third tank is a plain sedimentation tank meant for only separating solid and liquid phase. This one is not widely used as far as primary treatment is concerned. Okay, so there is an inlet through which the sewage comes inside. Whatever solids are present, they get settled at the bottom of the tank. Okay, and through the outlet, the effluent is removed. So this is just a plain tank. Okay, now settling tank. The major function of a sedimentation or a settling tank is to remove settleable solids from sewage by a process called as sedimentation. That means the tank, in this tank, only sedimentation of solid waste take place. The settled solids that get accumulated at the bottom of the tank are continuously removed, or they are removed at regular intervals, so that there no sludge digestion and no formation of gases take place, because there is no ventilator. Ventilators are not present for the escape of gases. Sedimentation is usually preceded by treatment using bar, screens, grid chamber to remove large object, coarse solid, etc. Okay, so the first thing which we studied is preliminary treatment. That means the sewage is first passed through bar screens, then it is passed through grid chambers to remove large objects, coarse solids and all, and then the sewage goes to the sedimentation tank where the solids settle, liquid effluent is removed from the top, the solids which settle at the bottom are removed. So a sedimentation tank, plain sedimentation tank, is just meant for removing the solids from the liquid. Okay, so that is all about preliminary and primary sewage treatment. Okay, so what are the methods by which primary treatment of sewage can be done? By using a septic tank, which is usually used in isolated rural building or small installations where number of people are not more. Then number two, Imhoff tank, which is much a better option over septic tank, and sometimes plain sedimentation tank where only solid and liquid phase are separated. So that is all with the primary treatment of sewage.